talk a little bit about leather in mainstream media and kind of the intersections that it has with other kink and queer communities today. My first question for you seems like we kind of have the answer already, but I'm going to ask it again just so we can get that soundbite from you. What would you say to someone who says that leather is just a kink? Is there more to it than that? Is it more than just a kink?
There are people who now, okay, so it is not just a kink, but it is a kink. Okay. It's for a lot of people, the feel, the smell, the look of leather is highly arousing. I feel sexy in leather. That's why I like to wear it before I ever got involved in the community. But that is a minute aspect of it. Where we talked about leather being in your heart, the service to community, teaching, educating about kink and the lifestyle and the history, supporting one another, that goes in beyond, way beyond the playing and the sex and everything else. That's more what leather is about, is our relationships. And again, that's one of those things that you will never see in the media. The media will only show us whipping and beating and chaining each other up and roping each other and walking around in assless chaps and all of that, which is all hot and you know, is what we do. But that's, again, not something we do all the time. If you go to a leather event, you will see, and you just read through the class descriptions. It's about relationships, something kinky, relationships, something kinky. You know, it's mostly about how we interact with one another. That is really what we teach and what we help each other out with constantly, is how to make us better people, not just better sadists or masochists or whatever, but better people. That's what leather's about.
I love that. And that is kind of where it feels like we hit that wall in mainstream media, is the representation aspect that does mirror a lot of issues that other communities, both in kink and certain queer communities, face as well, which is, yes, there's a sexual component to it, and nobody's downplaying that. That's not something we don't want to talk about. You sit me down and I'll talk about that all day. But there's so much more to it. It is an entire culture with an ethos and with ethics and with tradition and history. And none of that is portrayed on screen or in media. And so we do get this very one-sided kind of one-dimensional view of whole groups of people.
Exactly. And if you talk to pretty much anyone in the leather community, almost to a person, you will hear them say that they have become better people since they entered the leather community, that the support they've gotten, the education they've gotten, have made them better people, better fathers, better mothers, better citizens, better employees, better employers, better people. It certainly has made me better. I've always learning and growing. I have a far way to go. You know, people are like fruit on a tree. When we stop growing, we begin to rot. So I'm always growing, and the support I get from the leather community has helped me grow. I've gone through a lot this year, not just with COVID-19, but with relationships and so on and so forth. And giving to the leather community and them giving back to me, the support I've got from them is what has helped me get through this year. And I think anyone you talk to in the leather community is probably going to tell you the same story.
How are some, I know one misconception is that it's just a kink, it's all about the sex, it's the sadomasochism in terms of, you know, relationships in that way, but not everything else. What are some other misconceptions that people tend to have about the leather community? If you go up to somebody and you're like, I'm part of this group, I'm part of this community, this is my culture, what flashes in their head? What kinds of ridiculous questions do you end up getting asked?
I think one of the it's not just leather, but MS dynamics entirely, is that, slaves have no say so in anything, and that, I don't think they understand how valuable and how much we value consent in this community, and how much we have to teach the vanilla world about consent and respect. For, I don't think, I think they would be shocked. I know they are, because I've seen it. People go, "Oh yeah, I just want you to walk up to me, grab me, and start doing stuff to me." Okay, let's negotiate that, because I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Just
There's
randomly.
conversation.
Let's have a and it's the idea that it's actually safer. It's safer in this community than it is in the vanilla world. I think that would shock a lot of people. Mm-hmm. It is much safer. I feel much safer bringing a friend who is new to the leather scene to a dungeon than I would bringing them to a nightclub. So it's I think that's something that definitely does not get portrayed in the media.
That is,
I feel like it's a
part
bit
of
of a
it.
Yeah, just to say, I feel like it's a bit of a shortcut for a filmmaker to dress somebody in leather and to say, like, okay, we can make certain assumptions about who this person is because of what they're wearing. And, that may be fair, like that may be serving the story. But I guess I'm really wondering how you feel the leather community is portrayed in movies, or when we see somebody just show up in an all leather outfit. Whether or not that kind of lines up with reality in any meaningful way.
So if they're portraying them as a badass, awesome.
Sure. So long as they look good, just make us look good.
All leather folks are badasses, period. No, I'm kidding. But, the portrayal, as you said, of leather folk as villains, that's what I bristle against, because again, we're teachers, we're politicians, we're police officers, we're, mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers. We're your baker, we're your grocery store clerk. We're everywhere. We're the Uber driver. We're everywhere. And we're normal folks who just like to put on leather and, support each other and beat each other and do all kinds of nasty, kinky things to each other. But but other than that, we're normal folks. And and I do think, as you said, it's a cop-out to just put the villain in leather. And of course, he's wearing black leather. He must be a horrible person, and portray us as serial killers and torturers. And torturers without consent. I think that it's a lazy writing, for one. As a writer, I'll tell you, it's a lazy writing. So I'm offended on that score alone.
Multiple layers here. Oh, that's so amazing. And then I guess my last question for this section, and then we do have a couple more calls that we'll jump to, are what are some ways that we see leather culture celebrated in the community? So if you were to go to a leather event, I know I did a little bit of research. There are beauty contests, there are competitions, there are these awards that you give each other. What are some of the ways that you guys, in a pre-COVID and hopefully soon post-COVID world, what does getting together with a community for a celebration look like?
So you kind of alluded to the titles. I actually hold a title. I'm the Heartland Person of Leather 2019 and 2020 by default. And those competitions where we get together and people who have contributed to the community, and some, or people who just look good in leather, get up there and they compete, and they're voted. There's judges. They vote on it, and there are pageants and so on and so forth. And you get a title, and it's like winning an Oscar. It's a huge event. And it's amazing to be honored by your community as Mr. Leather Texas, Mrs. Leather MX Leather or whatever title you hold, it's a huge honor. And you get to go around the country and promote the leather lifestyle. And I think that's wonderful. There's also, so if beyond that, when you go to a leather event, as I mentioned, there are classes, there are demonstrations, and all of that as well. But and there are, of course, play parties. But usually, if it's a leather event and there's a title on the line, that's usually the centerpiece of it, is recognizing that title holder, the past title holders. That's a big thing. We recognize leather clubs and leather families. That's a big thing as well. Parade of clubs, where we actually walk out and with the back patches and show the different clubs and families and things like that. It's we're big on celebrating one another. That's a big part of leather culture.
That is awesome. We should do that in the atheist community. I want to be mixed atheist of Texas or whatever. That would be fine with me.